Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Deeply Renegade podcast. My name is Molly, also known as the Deeply Renegade, and I'd like to welcome you guys to episode 333. Today is Saturday, September 5th, 2020, and I'm glad you could join me today. It is a beautiful day. I am not believing the room thermometers reading at the moment. I'm guessing it's in the sun because I don't think it's 94 in here. Whatever. It's not without danger. It is handy to get sort of a read on what the temperatures are, but we might finally be getting some summer weather here in San Francisco, which is exciting. The fog is not here, so hopefully, what would it be? A visit to the beach later this afternoon should be wonderful, but the water's 57, so too cold. So I have gathered a lot of things around here. Table. What would be a little bit higher height than usual, but not too crazy. But I have brought together a bunch of different things, so it should be pretty decent. I'm recording a little bit earlier than I usually would on a Saturday, but whatever. Such is life. So what I am working on currently, which of course I drop, or what would it be? There are a lot of problems with what's going on right now. So I am working on the Mesa sweater wrap, which is a design by Romy Hill. It is a wrap style sweater with holes for arms, and I am knitting it with my Ginny the Fleece gradient, which is a Corriedale cross, BFL cross Shetland. So what would it be? This sheep was 50% Corriedale. What would it be? I guess maybe what I find to be interesting is the fact that what would it be? There's very little American BFL. So what would it be? Does all of the BFL come from Great Britain? I don't know. So I'm finishing up this row so I can actually show you guys what's going on. Which hopefully, I'm not at the beginning-ish, am I? No, I'm on the latter half, so we're looking okay. And I'm heading towards, or what would it be? The far side of it, so that also means that I will be able to unfurl it all the way, because my ball of completed yarn is speared upon the end, which is very exciting. So what would it be? So this week I managed to use up all of the full back and forth rows of teal, teal, teal. So it's taking about 2 grams per whatever round, I guess it's round, but it's about 1 gram per row and 2 rows per round, so not too crazy there. And then what I did was I took the next color in the sequence, which is teal, teal blue, and weighed it. And so I was actually fairly close to halfway done with that particular color. So what I ended up doing was figured out how much 1/3 of the weight of the next color would be, which is blue, blue, teal. And then I knit, what would it be, my teal, teal blue until I had about that much left. Not exactly, but what would it be? It'd be the case where I needed, with that particular part of the pattern, it's more like 4 grams, so it was whatever got me closest to 4 grams there. So it's maybe a little bit off kilter, but not the end of the world. And hopefully it's not too crazy, because this blue, blue, teal seems to be quite a lot finer than the teal, teal blue. So, as you do. But that's sort of how I'm doing the yarn management, is making sure that I have about a third in each section, and that's visually going to appear on the shawl more like fifths, I think so. Or what would it be? Or that I think would end up being the divisible amount. So yeah, so the section would end up being however many rows, and then this section, which has only one color in it, will be abbreviated. But that shouldn't be too crazy, or maybe it's more like thirds in the end. Whatever, I'll make it work. The math is probably not that important. It'll look pretty good. So with this restart of the Mesa Sweater app, would it be, the hope is now that I better understand how the pattern works, this means that I will be able to manage my yarn a little bit better. So my goal is that when I start doing 2-color stripes, that I have about a third. I may have needed to check what about a third looked like with respect to length instead of weight, but whatever. Weight is easier to measure than length in this case. Almost there. So this knitting is not very exciting, but it is my only project right now, or my only knitting project right now. So I'm hoping to get like a pretty good burn on this, so get a lot of rows done, make some good progress on it before introducing another project. That way I can like switch projects when this one is not exciting me. But what this project is great for is watching movies. So I can tell my balls of yarn apart by what size they are. So this is teal teal blue, and here is blue blue teal. And because this isn't purple, I can actually show you guys. So well, maybe the lighting is a little bit special, but what would it be? So this one is my background, and this one is my foreground one. And mostly this was engineered so that my blue, my all blue skein, will be a foreground color when I get to incorporate it later. But it is, yeah, I don't know how I got that tangled in that way, but whatever. So I have just completed a row there. It didn't quite work out quite right during the movie last night, but here's where we are right now. So you can pretty clearly see the teal. You can see how it is becoming more blue, but it may be a little hard to tell at this point that, what would it be? I had a brief solid color section before resuming striping again. Yeah, I managed to do quite a few rows since then. So I have, or whatever, so this section here is with the darker background stripe, and then I have a pretty small section here that's just alternating. So not sure entirely how I feel about that, or if I didn't quite judge the teal properly, or maybe this teal teal blue ends up being a little bit more, a little bit thicker than the other ones. I'm not sure. It definitely has a very nice hand though, but I'm worried that this guy is quite a lot thinner, so oh well, we'll see. This will probably last me a bit, so we'll make it work. but what would it be? I started to knit another teal row, and then I waited once I reached the end of the row, and I'm like, yeah, no, I bet 35 or 0.35 grams is not enough to finish. And that was true. It was not enough to finish, so not too crazy. So it's coming along, and it's going to be getting more love in the coming days, because I think I've put together a plan for what my next project's going to be, so that's exciting. But before I talk about that, I do want to cover the finished objects. So what would it be? I ended up finishing another Empower People bandana. So this is this one I ended up knitting much closer to Casapinka's design. So this is the Empower People 2020 bandana. It is, Casapinka calls for DK. I knit this with a light fingering, but basically it's a pretty gaugeless process, it's a pretty gaugeless project, so it doesn't really matter. This particular section of the yarn came from the unicorn tie-dye of my hip strings cotton. I got cotton sliver a few years ago at SSK, and then ended up spinning this cotton yarn, which is really nice. What would it be? I love the super bright, vivid, saturated colors. I'm not sure if the hot pink is like this is. What would it be? This bandana is pretty Barbie. But it in like, what would it be? So I can wear it a little jaunty. This bandana, which I ended up putting in the brioche pattern for, is maybe a little bit bigger circumference for the head, but maybe a little bit smaller in terms of total body. And this one is all, or this one is mostly blueberry crumble, and then this hat is sort of the combination of blueberry crumble and unicorn tie-dye. So you have all of these on at once, and you sort of see how everything sort of, whatever. We've got something coordinating here. This hat actually does keep me warm, interestingly enough. So this is Tensfield that I ended up finishing last week, I believe. Yeah, because I was already knitting this. I wouldn't have started that early. So, what was entertaining about this bandana is, so I had Excella at some point because I'm like, you know what, I just want to use all the yarn, call it good. And so whenever I did a pair, whatever, I did a set of garter back and forth, I would weigh my ball, write it down in Excel, and then I realized, because it's hand spun, it's, what would it be? And it was the case where I was figuring out how to spin the cotton, like definitely some inconsistencies there. So as a result, my grist was changing. So what I had going was I had one column that was straight up how much weight I had used that round, and then I had a 4-point moving average of how much yarn on average I was using every 4 sets of garter. And that tended to work to sort of localize in this section of yarn how quickly was I going through, and I was just keeping an eye out for how many rows I had remaining. Once I had, so I measured my gauge, I figured out what 2 inches was going to be in terms of rows, so it seemed like it was going to be 11. At 12, or at what seemed to be 12 rows remaining, because I was accounting for having, what would it be, the equivalent of 2 rows of whatever, 2 back and forths of yarn for the bind off. That was when I stopped increasing for the pattern so that I would have a place to seam it together. kept track of that, kept knitting the rows. What would it be? Once I had the equivalent of about a little bit less than 2 rows left, I did the bind off, and the bind off must have taken more yarn than I expected, because I had a tail about this long to seam up 2 inches of the thing. So with a tail like that, like I need 3 times the length to do something like a Kitchener. So I just ended up whip stitching it. It was like, okay, it blended in really nicely because it's all basically the same colorway. And after I finished whip stitching it, I had a centimeter of yarn left. It's bonkers. So whoopsies. I was hoping to have a little bit more. I was okay with having a decent sized tail, but I cut a little closer than planned. But it was the case where I was fairly confident that everything was going to work out okay, but that was a closer call than I was hoping for. So I got to enter both of these into the Bay Area Fiber Fair, because that's for the Empower People project, which is about encouraging people to vote in the US elections that are coming up in not too many days. What would it be? It's Fall of the Heart. Or would it be? I guess it's less than, yeah, it's less than 2 months away now. Shenanigans. And then, what would it be? I also got to count it because I was knitting with a non-wool yarn, so all of these count for being cotton. And then I ended up counting the pinker bandana as, what would it be? A close call, because that was very close on the yardage. So I did manage to use all of the hand spun. I spread it out across 3 projects. I started off with 590 yards. So we shall see. What would it be? I did offer to give the one I had just completed, the pink one, to a friend, but I'm not sure whether or not she's gonna take me up on the offer, so whatever. But I have my more purpley blue one, which obviously makes my heart happy. But then we have this sort of light purple pink with a couple pops of blue in it, so. And there's definitely some deeper purple in here as well. And I managed to hide my tail pretty good, but this is my little seam. If I bring it really close, will it focus? Yeah. That's my little seam. So it seamed up pretty clean, all things considered. So yay! After having no finished objects aside from spinning, for months and months and months, it's entertaining that I've gotten to have several and many episodes in a row. And that will stop. Fairly soon, I'm assuming. But whatever. I need some easy wins, and now that we've gotten them, it's good to go. So I think that I was spinning this yarn last week. And I sat down today and actually, I don't know how I got so much of my hair in this, but I also need to clean up my nails a little bit too because it's catching, but whatever, I got a lot of my hair in this. Like spun into this, but so this is my classy squid hip strings and Friends in Fiber little combination roll-locks that I was showing earlier. Let me cover my face and hold it still. So it is primarily brown, but it sort of has this frosting of blue and gray. So the gray from the hip string, or sorry, purple and gray, and the purple is from Friends and Fiber. So I just took the leftovers from my little sheep to sweater spin and I incorporated into this. And then today I pulled out the Dawn and the hot water and I did a clean of this guy so it's no longer tacky and lanolin-y. Would it be? It's a fun spin. It's like super duper soft and supple because the Rologs ended up putting in an awful lot of loft. But despite its fluffiness, it's still actually pretty freaking fine. So I can look this up if it hasn't been too long since I last posted about this one. This one I finished not too long ago. Alright, where did I quantify this? Alright, I probably quantified here. So this is 65 yards and 7.2 grams. So at some point yeah, so if I'd had 4 ounces of this, it would have been 1,000 yards. I was hoping to spin thicker, but whatever, such is life. So it's a really compelling, lovely little yarn. Would it be? But yeah, no, there wasn't a lot to start with here. So it's still a little bit damp. It has fun, silky texture in it that, based on me carding out Rologs, ended up sort of clumping together a little bit more, but you can see the silky texture. But I don't know whether or not you guys can see the purple. Like, it's very subtle. But whatever. Learning about how much I need to incorporate in order to make something happen. I didn't have a whole lot of fiber to begin with, so there's that. So this one I'm gonna end up letting dry a little bit more, probably on the shower curtain, but it was mostly dry. It's fairly warm in San Francisco today. It's not 57. It's also not 80, but it may be 80 farther away from the ocean. It's this way. That's the direction of the ocean from here. So, not too crazy there. Nice little palette cleanser project. Sort of what's up next is a lot of the samples from my various Clemis and Clemis classes. So I think that'll end up being, would it be, the next sort of palette cleanser project that I'll be looking into. I don't know if I'll pull everything out and look at it and figure out if there are things I want to combine together. Would it be? So there might be things that I want to combine together so that I can make a more substantial thing. We'll see. Yeah, no, because it's definitely the case where for my Save and Shave 'em workshop, like those are amounts of fiber that are good and sufficient. Plenty of fiber to make a thing. What's maybe not, or what's not as clear is some of the smaller samples when for the workshops I did that had a lot more stuff. Yeah, because I have 2 fractal spins and or would it be? So I have my like fractal spins, and then I'm not even really sure about what's happening with my initial exploring the drum carder. I'm guessing my samples from the Rollag blending board class are also in there too. So maybe I'll find some way to mix those together to make something cool. We'll see. What would it be? Because I think like Lester Longwool and Florida Cracker. So we'll make it work. On the spinning front, I've actually made quite a lot of progress. So I'm doing the final, for me, month of the Feather Your Nest Challenge, and I ended up pulling out, and I showed you guys this last week, but I pulled out my Something Wicked, which is a fin, and the Wabi Sabi, which is a BFL. They had very, very similar colors. The Wabi Sabi had more gray, and the Something Wicked had more orange. So what I ended up doing was try to get it sort of in equal weights for each of my bundles. So I started off with 8 ounces, and then I split it up by colors, and then would it be roughly speaking 4 different colors to make 2-ounce bats. So then I would have 2 ounces of that, and I had roughly an ounce of Wabi Sabi and roughly an ounce of Something Wicked in each one of the bats, so that I would sort of have good mixing of the BFL and fin, because the BFL is longer than the fin. The fin is very soft. I was surprised at how soft the fin was, but it was also quite a bit shorter. So after I made the 4 bats, I did an Instagram live on making the orange, or that sort of shows some footage of me making the first orange bat, and then probably a little bit of me getting started with the brown one. So roughly speaking, the colors I ended up creating were a darker blue, a lighter blue, sort of a foxy orange, and sort of like a nutty pale brown. So this is the brown. And this is the orange. This orange was like super duper enjoyable. And then I still have, I still have some of the lighter blue left. I've spun all of the darker blue at this point. And then what I ended up doing after I was done carding everything, I decided that I wanted to break it up a little bit more. And so my initial plan of having 2/3, 2/3 would have resulted in a yarn that was like it wouldn't have worked out. I wouldn't have had mixing of the 2 center colors if I had done 1/3, 2/3. Because then I would have that halfway point and it wouldn't have quite mixed. So I needed to have a little bit of end weighting. I needed to have a little bit more on either of the ends in order to make that work. And so that then I could have it so that it was like 50-50. And then after I'd sort of figured that out, I decided I wanted to make a little bit better of a transition between things. So I ended up stealing a quarter of the bat from each one in order to combine together into like a bridge bat. So that meant that I had 7 roughly 1-ounce bumps, where 2 of them were heavier, but then I had 1-ounce ones in the middle, so I had 5 1-ounce ones, and then 2 that were more like 1.5, something like that. It was pretty close. And so I made the dark blue and the brown the ends, and then it goes brown, orange, lighter blue, darker blue, and then I have the middle ones where, for example, this one I have mixed orange and brown together, and so this makes a much warmer brown. So maybe you can see somewhat. This guy is just a little bit warmer than that one. But then it sort of toned down the orange, so this is the orange here. So they're distinct, but maybe beyond the capabilities of my camera to really show you. And then this one was a little bit strange. So this one is the blue and orange together. It looks sort of silvery on the camera and whatever. It's probably the best that I'm going to be able to do with that one. And then this one is a combination of the light blue and orange. So definitely the case where it's softening that transition quite a lot, because otherwise it would have been very stark in the yarn. But definitely much toned down from the orange itself. So that ended up working out fairly well. I just spent an evening, I think Tuesday, going through, and Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever. Might have even been Monday. Whatever. Time is fluid, pandemic times, nonsense. So, went through all of that so that I could put together a pretty smooth transition. And I've already finished spinning a bobbin of it. So what I have on the very tippy top of this is the blue, and then I have this guy right underneath it, which is the blue and orange mixed together. The orange is all covered, but this one is the mixture of orange and brown, and this one is brown. If I bring it really close, does the color look better? At least it focused. I don't know. Yeah, this end is all blue. You can't see any orange in this bobbin end, but you can maybe see some of the darker blue. I don't know, the darker blue ended up turning out fairly light. What would it be? That gray ended up toning down things quite a lot. But whatever, such is life. So, like, my bridge between my darker blue and my lighter blue just looks like a more solid version of the colors. Let's see if I can bring in bobbin into frame. Okay. Maybe? Okay. So, starting in here, sort of this more tonal area is this guy, and then this more solid area up here is the bridge bat. And you really can't see that blue, but I'll be able to show it to you when I'm finished with the yarn. Bring everything back in again. Oh, well, such is life. So that's sort of how that process is going. It's looking pretty good that I'll actually be done with the yarn this weekend, which is awesome. Would it be? I'm spinning it significantly thinner than my last couple of projects. The single, I don't know, what would it be? I'm hoping to get a thicker yarn. And I've split up the fiber in a way so that I have a little bit of extra brown on this last bobbin. And on my first bobbin, I had a little bit of extra blue. So when I start plying them, I'll end up getting that 50% shift. It's not going to be super precise because it's challenging for me to be spinning thicker right now, so it takes some concentration to make sure I don't end up getting too fine. Definitely easier for me to spin thick from these bats, so that's good. The other piece yeah, so try to be good, but it may just end up being a mess. I'm just gonna let it ply as it plies and call it good. Hopefully I'm semi-consistent between things. Would it be if I turned out starting out thicker, it's probably just going to end up matching up somehow. I'm not too worried about it. Would it be, or it'll be in the blue. Since the blue is sort of the softest part of the gradient, it's or would it be, it's the smoothest part of the gradient, so it will be hard to tell if things end up getting super off kilter in that section. So not too great. So when I'm applying it, I'll be starting with the browns. So we'll see how everything comes together. I'm not too concerned about it. But what I was hoping to be able to do was actually to combine it with this yarn. So this is core spun from a bat that I ended up doing a few years ago. So this is a Dawning Dreams bat that I ended up core spinning over some Zephyr and then 2-plying on itself to make this super fun squishy yarn. So I'm wondering, based on how much yardage I get, maybe striping it or figuring out some sort of stripe sequence where I can have a little bit of both. So this will end up bringing, so this one sort of has the browns and oranges, but then it also sort of has clearer teals and blues in it, so I'm thinking it will play really nicely with this guy. So, and I haven't quite figured out like what I wanted to do with this particular skein. It's super gorgeous and super squishy, and I think it turned out to be way more yardage than I had initially expected, because you don't use a lot of fiber when you're core spinning, so would it be, and it's just so fluffy and gorgeous and lovely. And then you can see little bits of my core peeking through here because it is a white core, but whatever, such is life. So that's sort of my thought process right now, is that that'll be a lot of fun, and that'll sort of bring more saturation into the project, because this turned out to be very soft. The fiber itself had very saturated parts and then a decent amount of white, basically. And so blending together many times, that ended up just sort of bringing out this soft whiteness in it. Given the option, or maybe something that I need to think about in the future, is having black fiber on hand so that I can dial the saturation back up again. What would it be? So just things that I'm learning as I'm sort of going through the process. I do have some BFL that is pretty saturated that I'm pondering about doing a sort of rainbow bridge sort of project with it as well. So maybe that'll be the case where, because those are solid colors and because they're sort of jewelly rainbow colors as well, I don't think I'll have the problem of layering it as I'm carding bats. So should be interesting. I'm sort of excited about what I can create. Really enjoying spinning from the bats. Really glad to have this tool in order to make them. Really glad that the project's going quickly because I'm able to spin thicker. Would it be, or it's a matter of perspective. So if you're spinning really fine, then it's going to end up taking much longer to get through that fiber. So not too crazy there. Hopefully I'll be able to put together something pretty fun with all of these. And what would it be? Today I ended up spinning while watching the Lambtown Fiber Festival Sheep to Shawl. So got to do that while I was drinking the morning coffee and wanted to be listening to the pleasant conversation while everyone was working on their crazy neon bats. So, freaked out the focus. So I did sit down and pull out all of my finger and weight hand spun. So I have all sorts of fun stuff in these bags. And I'm not sure whether or not they're going to be. I've done like a couple. Everything in this bag is a sock yarn experiment. So what would it be? I have quite a lot of this one. So this was sort of my summer of sock yarn dealio. So I have in here I have 3 different cable yarns. So I have Into the World, Nest, and Nest as cable yarns. Then what I have here are 2 different opposing ply yarns. So this one here is a opposing ply yarn where I plied 2 of them and then plied it again with the opposite direction single. In this one, this is an opposing ply yarn where I plied all of the yarn at the same time, so I didn't do a second ply on it. So both very interesting yarns. They are very crazy and textured looking because of that opposing ply. So this one is Southern Cross, my first ever summer crossfit, Southern Cross spin, and then this guy here is Three Water Farm. So there is that. My cables. I'm not sure whether or not I want to use this guy for socks. I'm probably going to end up using this guy for a shawl. But this is my beach spin from Nest. And definitely can see whatever the inconsistencies in here. But I'm guessing this one is actually destined to be a shawl and not socks. This guy is my Western Sky Knits. So BFL. This one was one where I sort of screwed up a little bit, and so what ended up happening was I spun one half of the fiber from one end of the braid and the other half from the other, and when I chain plied it, I got very, very different weights and yardages on my 2 supposedly matched skeins. So, whoopsies. So anything that I would knit with this would need to be alternated. But yeah, no, so such is life. And then this guy sort of is my transition one. So this is Nest. Way, way more pastel than I think I would normally do. But this was a completely twisted and arbitrary spin along. So what I did was I split the braid in half. And half of it I chain plied, and half of it I did a fractal 3-ply. So this one would be striped as well, more than likely. I'm guessing this guy is a silk blend. It's been a while since I've thought about this, but yeah. So this guy is very much so sort of pastels and cool colors, and there's this whatever sea foamy grayish blue in it. It's an interesting color. And then my latest skein of fingering weight, and I believe that this, I'm pretty sure that this is fingering weight. So this is Three Waters Farm in the Lakeside Forest. And so this guy is a traditional 3-ply. And this one is, I think this guy is, it's a silk blend of some sort. I'm trying to remember if it was pullover silk or not. But traditional 3-ply, fingering weight, should make really nice socks as well. So, but it was good to like pull everything out and look at it and figure out what was going on. And I think what's going to end up happening is that I'm going to go for the experiment. So I believe that I'm going to actually do the Southern Cross. I think this is BFL. And this is going to end up resulting in a pretty decent amount of double dipping. So that's why I'm not going to immediately cast on. Would it be Earth Tones Girl is hosting her annual Falling Leaves sock knit along, and I do believe let's blowing that out a bit. There we go. And I do believe that this guy is probably out of all of the skeins the most fall. Possibly this one being fall, but whatever. But I think I want to dip, or for the first handspun sock experiment, I want to dip into this one because this one is probably the strangest construction. Would it be? Because I have my chain plies, my 3-plies, my cable plies, and then these opposing ply structures. So would it be? It'll be really interesting to see how this guy comes together. And because of sort of the reds and browns, I believe the colorway was Desert Rose. I'm not sure whether or not David repeats colorways, but what would it be? Yeah, my only concern is whether or not in some sections I ended up taking out too much plying twist. Because it's definitely a very crazy looking yarn, but I think this is the most fall of the options. But bring it in, shadow, but it's very crazy. So I think this one will be the first one, just because I really want to sort of evaluate this more exotic structure. I sort of have a sneaking suspicion my cable plies are going to be pretty tough. But this one I want to sort of evaluate a little bit further. And then I think I need to knit with this. So this one is even more wackadoodle. So whatever. This one is, they're such gorgeous colors. I don't think I can justify calling this fall at all, so I think that's what I'm going to end up doing. So the other thing that I wanted to do was actually to knit one of Hey Brown Berry's patterns. So she released this week a pattern called Now and Next, and it's a top-down textured sock. But what's interesting about it is that she actually has a different method of closing the toe. So instead of using Kitchener stitch, she made a video this week about using the Finchley graft. So that particular sock incorporates that, or really it's something that you probably incorporate into anything. So what would it be? It'll take a little bit of thinking, because if I'm knitting on my usual combination of if I'm knitting on my usual combination of a 9-inch circular and my double points, it'll be hard to flip it inside out. So I might need to figure out something else going on there. Sorry, I'm just remembering how crazy elastic this stuff is. And so because I've never knit a Hey Brown Berry pattern before, that also counts for the Sock Knitter's Cal for the months of September and October. So the prompt is, what would it be? Basically to knit with a designer you haven't knit with before. So I figured that that was a pretty good combination of things. So support Earthworm Girl, Brownberry, and the group I'm a moderator in. Not too crazy. So I figure this one will work. And I just love hand-spun socks so much, so I'm really glad that I'm getting back to it again. But hopefully I can maybe get things going to the point where I don't have this crazy backlog of sock yarn going, because there's a lot of it. So would it be? It would be good to make a dent in some of this stuff. So would it be? I probably need to separate this guy out and put it with my more shawl earmarked yarns, because yeah, no, I just want this. Or would it be? I think this guy just needs to be a shawl. Would it be? Because there's a special place in my heart for something beachy. But what would it be? And then I'll have to figure out if I have extra time, if I end up picking something else to be, would it be picking different ones for the later ones. So I'm thinking either this one or this one would end up probably counting for the fall cal. Or I could probably justify either of these for that particular knit along. Just a guess. I do already have some chain ply socks. I have traditional 3-ply, and I have 2 pairs that are traditional 3-ply, so it'll be really interesting to see how they all compare, and then be a little bit sad that I have 9 skeins of sock yarn and only 3 pairs of hand-spun socks. So, I think that is everything that I wanted to cover this week. Don't see any issues with recording next week. Nothing exciting is happening. And hopefully I'll have quite a lot of crafting content just because I have a little bit of extra time off. So that's why I managed to get through roughly 6 ounces of spinning this week, so not too crazy. And what would it be? I guess I'll end up figuring out where my creativity takes me from there. I don't know if I'm going to be resuming my main color sweater spin after this, or if I'm going to start systematically working through the rest of my small samples to sort of debulk the stash or whatever, keep trying to spin things down. But at least in the near term, I'm going to be focusing on the sweater with maybe a little bit of excitement on the side with respect to hand-spun socks in a couple of days, so not too crazy. So with that, I hope you guys have a lovely week, and I look forward to talking to you guys next week. So take care, guys. Bye-bye.